Next, we'll go to Senator Francis Heyliger. You ready? You ready? You're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon to my colleagues, the people of the territory, to the testifiers, to staff. One thing that you had discussed in regards to more individuals that were vaccinated versus unvaccinated getting COVID. As an individual that has followed this trend as it relates to COVID, where the narrative has altered multiple times over the past 2 years. At one point, it was herd immunity. Another point, it's, we just need to get people vaccinated. The last message I heard that it's more important to have natural immunity. It's 13 times more protective than the vaccination. It's so many things that we've heard that has led us to this point. But I personally would like to thank all the nurses and individuals that worked very hard during COVID to protect and assist the people of this territory. But when it comes back to your health and your wellness, why do you believe that the hospitals are insisting on utilizing the same method when it comes to dealing with COVID as opposed to easing because we are now in an endemic versus a pandemic?
This is Dr.
Anyone can respond.
I'll respond. So this is Dr. Dawson. I think that in the territory, we have to consistently layer on a place of caution because we have such limited resources and staff to support the patients if they do become ill. So I do think they're leaning more towards a conservative approach versus pulling back. Testing, we have at the hospital system, because I work there, begun to allow visitors to come in without, with either a positive or a negative test or a vaccine card. So they are loosening some of their protocols and allowing visitors to exchange, but they're still taking a very conservative approach, but it doesn't mean that approach is best practice currently.
Okay, well, thank you for saying that. I also want to know in regards to individuals that we knew that at some point there was a huge uproar in terminating nurses that chose not to be vaccinated. Do you know or have a number of how many nurses were released? And since we are now in an endemic and life has changed somewhat, do you think some of those nurses would be able to come back to work in order to potentially alleviate the cost of having to hire traveling nurses, which according to what was shared is 4 to 5 times more costly than supporting the very local nurses that are here?
Good morning, this is Michelle
Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Senator. This is Michelle Montoya, registered nurse. The amount of nurses that have left is closing on the number of 50, considering that 10 more have left in the past couple of months. There's a mixture of people who were unvaccinated and vaccinated. What I do know is that currently, as the policy states, you are not allowed to even reapply to the hospitals unless you are vaccinated. So they're not taking people back. So if you didn't have an exemption before you left, you cannot come on new or apply again and have an exemption to come on if you choose not to be vaccinated.
Okay, well, if the tide is shifting, do you think that that is best practice since we are in need of nurses at a cost measure?
Absolutely not. I think that it is something that the board needs to look at again because it created a division amongst people also. You're vaccinated, you're not vaccinated. Okay. And, being that it's endemic now and we're all in this together.
1 minute.
We need to be able to say that we need people on board.
This is part of the problem. I understood that narrative, what was being pushed on the public last year. Let's even say last year. But we've learned so much more about COVID since then that both vaccinated and unvaccinated equally, but it even seems more disparaging now that more unvaccinated people, more vaccinated, seem to have gotten COVID than the unvaccinated. So the narrative that was initially pushed that caused this division between vaccinated and unvaccinated turned out to be a false narrative.
I agree with you completely.
If this knowledge is now available, why is it the board is not accepting this current knowledge and recognizing the importance of potentially opening the doors back to these individuals, from my opinion, that might have been falsely been forced to leave because the narrative at that time has now been proven to be wrong?
Time.
And may I respond?
Yes, you may respond.
In my personal opinion, it is sometimes that when people learn of something, they run with it. And they've gone so far down that lane that they don't know how to come back from it, regardless of what facts and science and numbers are now telling them. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the response, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the additional time.
Thank you very much, Senator Heyliger, for your
To the conversation that these mandates were never discussed with the unions and actually directly violated our union contracts. So even with outreach to the board, even in outreach to hospital leadership, they continue to violate the contracts without moving forward or even being willing to meet or negotiate them, because we had alternate options prior.
Thank you. And again, this discussion of Francis Heyliger, you recognize for your 5 minutes. I'm sorry, that's 2 minutes.
Thank you.
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
It's okay. I know. Thank you once again for the time. I want to ask, one of the things that was brought up in the testimony had to do with the concerns of the environmental and workplace concerns that's been happening. Have you guys had a sit down or speak to anyone and receiving a timeline for some of these things to get fixed, and the concerns that you were having, as you did share that some of these issues prompted individuals to leave the hospitals as nurses?
This is Dr. Dawson speaking. In relation to JFL, the continued response has been primarily we're going to be moving to the JFL North facility, and it should resolve those issues. It wasn't until nurses on the unit, for example, labor and delivery, started becoming ill, and one specifically actually having to resign before anything actually occurred on that unit specifically. The conditions kind of continue to follow. When something comes up, rather than being preventative or working in advance, we're waiting and being reactive. So a lot of it's more reactive. And we have met, but the answer is JFL North.
Okay, so in regards to JFL, you're basically saying to me that they are aware that these things could potentially be causing health issues to the workers, as well as major concerns for the employees, but the response is just, we're moving. But we have been moving since I have been a member of this legislature. So I'm a little bit concerned that that's headed into 2 years. And to have these types of issues that you guys were discussing, that's a major problem. And you know, it's one thing when you come before the legislature and you bring this to our attention, but a lot of times these things have to be resolved under the executive branch. It's their job to execute. It's their job to clean up a lot of these things. And we're here in shock when we're hearing some of these things from you, because it should never be happening. But at the end of the day, I could only be a mouthpiece. I could pick up a phone, I could call, I can encourage. My colleagues could try to force issues by writing things into legislation. But a lot of these things have to do with policy and giving a hoot about the very people that you claim you give about and to care about. So I am seriously looking forward to you guys giving us an update as to what is being done, and not just consistently being told, you know, we're moving. We're moving is not an answer. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for the time.
If I may.
Thank you very much, Senator.
If I may respond to that.
Senator Francis Heyliger, you may. Again, you need to be succinct. You may. Again, you need to be succinct.
Thank you. This is Michelle Montoya, registered nurse. Senator, they have known about this for years. In 2019, the ICU staff had been complaining every day regarding the mold, the itching, respiratory issues, etc. It wasn't until the governor and an associate of his went into the ICU. The associate immediately had some type of respiratory attack, had to be ushered out. And then within 2 weeks, the ICU was closed and remodeled. So when you talk about, the people that they claim to give a hoot about, that's exactly how we feel. It took for someone that is important to come in order for our own staff to be recognized in their health issues. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
On many things, we've reported our situation to OSHA. We've had an investigation done. We were refused the actual results of the testing of our building. All the modulars are infected to a certain extent, and we were told the staff is going to move. We are still in the tent and hopefully to move by the end of this month. And like Ms. Montoya said, it was only until we stepped up to the executive branch and said, this is the problem, when we were taking actually serious. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Canton. Senator Gitzik will recognize Senator Francis Heyliger. You're recognized for your 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to the testifiers, to the people of the territory, as well as central staff and my colleagues. Well, my first set of questions, do we have a number of how many naturopathic doctors are here in the territory that currently exist?
Who is that question to?
Well, I could address it to the attorney, Sykes. Is he aware since he?
No, I do not track that type of information.
So would anybody on testifying would know if anyone here has a naturopathic? No one?
Well, typically,
Okay.
Typically a licensing board, and I'm not quite clear on the licensure status. I know you do have a licensing law, but that would be the entity that would most likely know the number.
What I also wanted to find out when it comes to naturopathic medicine is any type of pharmaceutical training in case of emergency or et cetera, is that also taught to them in school, or would a board have to create a policy in regards to that?
The education does include training in pharmacognosy and pharmacology. And again, that's in order for the naturopathic doctor to be able to recognize potential side effects, and also to know that if patients are on any conventional medications, whether there may be concerns with any of their natural interventions in terms of the effect on the conventional remedies. So they gain what you might say a baseline literacy in pharmacology, so that they can better serve the needs of their patients. In a few states, they are allowed to prescribe certain conventional remedies, but that's done on a state-by-state basis, and that would be specified by statute or regulation.
Okay, thank you for that. I know that it was suggested that licensees potentially have to do and complete 30 days of continuing training. Is this something that you believe that? Oh, I thought someone had said something. In regards to continuation of training and education as a naturopath, do you believe that this is something that has to be board approved, or is this something national where it's standard for naturopaths to continue to have continuing education?
It's certainly standard for doctors of naturopathy to have continuing education. And there are national organizations. There's a national professional organization in the U.S. that offers extensive training. There are also state professional associations and some specialty societies. And some of these programs are state recognized, state approved, and that's a state-by-state decision.
Okay, thank you. Did I hear time? I want to make sure, because we're limited to
You have 30 seconds remaining, Senator.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask in regards to the process of licensure that that would be coming about, would there be parallel to licensure for, say, a regular doctor versus a naturopathic doctor cost-wise? Because some might say they're different levels. Do you think that they should be on the same level when it comes to cost and fees, et cetera, regular versus naturopathic?
Time.
So just, I mean, I can answer that if that's helpful. Typically, states will base the cost on the number of practitioners. It depends upon whether the legislature feels that the fee should be able to support the work of the board or not. So there's a judgment call on that. Because there are a smaller number of naturopathic doctors, it may be a higher fee that's charged them, although you would not want to be so prohibitive that people would not be able to afford to become licensed. But apart from the fees, the licensure process is very similar across all medical professions. Graduation from an accredited program, passage of a licensing exam, a check into the legal aspects of a person, whether there are any criminal record and so forth. And sometimes states will also check in, provide some training on the laws of that state.
Okay. Thank you so much for those responses. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the additional time.
Thank you very much, Senator Francis Heyliger.
Francis Heyliger, you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon again to my colleagues, to the testifiers, to the people of this territory, and to the staff. Since I've been in this 34th legislature, we have been discussing this particular bill. And for me, every time I think it's going to come out a little bit cleaner, there's more questions. And I'm a little bit concerned where I think we need to focus on potentially zoning in on a lot of these concerns that was brought to us by many of the testifiers today, such as violation of HIPAA laws. One of the concerns I have has to do with giving quite a bit of power to this director of behavioral health. I also have a concern as to the potential calculation of dealing with our indigent here in the territory. Have we done any sort of calculation as to how much this would cost? I could speak for myself that recently had to deal with a behavioral health issue within my own family. And if we did not have insurance, I could clearly see how issues like this could bankrupt a family. And I'm serious enough to know the importance of having a program for and a setup for behavioral health, but I also have to weigh and balance it with the fact that we don't even have the facilities to do so. Now, we speak about the one location at Schultebrand. I had an opportunity to visit them, and I think they told me, if I recall correctly, they could house 14. And you are correct, some of those individuals came over from St. Croix. There's also a separate building up there that have some roof damage. I got a tour of that building. That building seems to be very sound building-wise. The roof needs to fix. Has there been any type of assessment to see if to fix that roof is going to cost another $5-6 million, if that much? Because then that location, according to what was shared, can hold another 32 to 35 people. And in speaking to colleagues and knowing what transpired in the meetings, I think yesterday, as to potentially needing another $30 million to build a facility on St. Croix, I am a firm believer that we do need to focus on shoring up the locations in order to do all of these things we're claiming we want to do. We have question about funding. We have questions here about one of the things that stuck out for me in the document. It spoke to the treatment, the treating medical provider versus someone that's a psychiatrist. So are we now going to shift to someone that is just a treating medical provider to assure that they have the capabilities, the knowledge, and the training to potentially put someone away. These kind of things concern me. And I fully understand what needs to be done and what we want to do with this piece of legislation, but I think it needs to be continually worked on until it's a document that is very safe and erases or takes away quite a bit of the concerns that many of these testifiers shared with us today. Constitutional issues, bankruptcy, cost of indigency, giving power to individuals that now is causing me a pause. So I really think that whether we're going to be amending this document, bringing forward information to do so, I will be looking forward to that when it comes so we could clean it up. But I also think we need to focus on actually having the locations fixed. We have Schultebrand here, another 32 to 35 people can be there. Get the building in St. Croix done. And I'm not saying this because I just want to be talking about it. We have a habit here in the Virgin Islands. We spend money on architectural drawings. We spend money on case studies. We spend monies on the consultant to the consultant to the consultant to the architecture, and then the building never gets built. That's a problem for me. Either we're going to be serious about this, or we're just going to keep giving lip service, push through a bill that it don't even have any buildings in order to help the people with. That wouldn't make any sense to me.
Time.
So thank you very much. Let me just close up. I'm simply asking my colleagues, could we please clean this up? I think behavioral health is important. We need legislation like this. But most importantly, we need the locations to help the people that need the help here in our territory. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Thank you very much. I think there's some clarification.
Please recognize Commissioner Canasiong's mic. You may proceed.
Thank you, sir. I think there's some clarification that's needed. When embarking on a behavioral health or any kind of clinical facilities, I think that CEO Attorney Commission was the first person that spoke about it, and that is regulatory entities. We have CMS, we have Joint Commission. Those regulatory entities provide rules and regs as to how the operational functions should take place. So it's not going to be haphazard. Any entity, whether it be public or private, if Medicare, Medicaid services are being provided and paid for by Medicaid or Medicare, the regulatory responsibilities fall under health as well as the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So the guidance would be given there, the mandates would be given there, so it's not going to be done haphazardly. So that's one of the things I felt best to clarify. Right now we pay, another thing is cost. Right now we pay about $400 to $500. I think one agency we pay more than $500 per day for services. So it will be similar to that. The difference is that we will have these individuals home, and I think that building a facility closer and having one in St. Croix as well as fixing Elder Schultebrand, and I have Assistant Commissioner Ruben Malloy who can tell us exactly what's going on with Elder Schultebrand and why we have to, if there's a delay on that as well. I just wanted to make those clarifications. Right now we have 27 individuals in Elder Schultebrand. We can hold about 32. Thank you. And so in terms of indigent fee, currently right now, the Department of Health and the government of the Virgin Islands do pay for individuals with a certain degree. If they have insurance, of course, that is considered for most of the cost for inpatient care throughout the territory and off island as well.
Thank you. Personal privilege.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to share with my colleagues and the general public that I am in support of 34-0279. Unfortunately, with the 4-page amendment from discussions today, it will not be able to fully clean up some of the issues that still would exist with this bill. We have discussed that it will be moving on to rules where further amendments would be done. But as the only sitting senator that is neither a member of finance or rules, I do not get a second bite at the apple to guarantee this. So once these amendments are done, and I hope that they are done in rules and forwarded to the full body, hopefully by then they're cleaned up and I would be able to support entirety. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. However, you're always invited to attend the Rules and Judiciary hearing as well.